Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Flash, as well as the latest episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Starting off with The Flash, a lot of things went down this episode. For one, we finally got to meet Caitlyn's mom, and she's kind of what you kind of expected. Like, she's kind of an asshole a bit, especially like when she first showed up. Like the fact that she's like, I mean, I guess you could look at it as in a more positive light, but the fact that she was just like, oh, Caitlyn, you should have told me you were coming, let me know ahead of time or something like that. It's like, she's your daughter, she has the right to kind of pop up whenever she wants to. I mean, you also saw the fact that Caitlyn was she's like, oh yeah, just tell Caitlyn, she's like, I'll just tell her that, Caitlyn's here to see her, and now just, I don't have an appointment, but just tell her Caitlyn's here to see her. She didn't even want to admit, it's like, yeah, that's my mom. I mean, granted, you kind of understand why, because she doesn't look at her as a mom, because for her mom stopped being a mom after her dad died, which it's understandable, because her mom kind of grew very cold. It's because the only way she could, stop the pain, dealing with the pain was to kind of dive headfirst into work, meaning she kind of left her daughter behind. It's like, your daughter misses your husband just as much as you do, but it's like, when in a situation, you get so caught up in your own grief, you kind of forget about other people. Because she even threw it out there. It's like, oh yeah, you don't know what it's like, but it's like, because, I was like, but, I brought it, I was like, oh, she doesn't know about Robbie, does she? Ronnie, I said, because I said Robbie because of Robbie Amell, but Ronnie, because, they haven't talked in 3 years. Because I even love the fact is, just to kind of show more kind of how she could be, she was like, oh yeah, I thought, oh wait, I didn't miss your birthday again, did I? Oh, I thought I sent a postcard, I thought I sent a card or whatever. And she's like, you did. In April. The way she said it made it seem like, yeah, you sent it the wrong month too, or that you sent it too late, too early, what I'm saying? Plus the fact is that she's like, oh, you only show up when you're in trouble. Plus it's like, I got a lot of work to do, I'm too busy to help you with whatever you come. It's like, your daughter hasn't talked to you in 3 years. You would think that you would take this opportunity to kind of extend an olive branch, but that was kind of too much for her. And like I said, the fact is that she didn't know about Ronnie at all, because it's like, oh yeah, I lost my husband. It's like, oh yeah, she didn't even know you got married. I mean, granted, that was kind of like hey, we got married, and then the end of season 1's finale happened. I mean, well, that all happened in the span of a couple minutes. So it's just kind of it wasn't, it all happened pretty fast, but still, makes it sound like she probably didn't even know the fact is that Caitlyn was dating Ronnie in general. It's just kind of like, oh, you took that job in Star Labs, you should have been working here with me, and it's just like, things would have been better, you had a good opportunity here, but Caitlyn's like, I went off because I wanted to I want to make a name for myself, and it's just like, oh, you went off and worked with that quack, which, I guess in her eyes is a little insulting, especially knowing that the Wells from Earth 1 is dead too, so it's kind of like you're besmirching a dead man when you actually think about it. But her mom did kind of redeem herself later on in the episode, because I was going to give her mom, I was not going to give her mom the benefit of the doubt. It's like, oh, your daughter, the way her body's working and everything could coincide with what the experiment or, research we're doing right now. So I was so sure that she was going to make Caitlyn kind of go hey, secretly I'm saying that I'm helping you, but really I'm just using you for an experiment. Sadly, it turned out only Nigel was doing that, and that was kind of messed up. It's kind of, to me, it's kind of stupid. Why would you do that? Did you not think she'd fight back or something? It's like, oh, I'm gonna lock this woman up in this room with me. I'm not letting her go, because apparently, I guess her mom's very hard to work with, because he's like, I need to get out of here, and the only way I'm gonna further my research and kind of get ahead of your mom is by, you can help me do that, so you're not leaving it to them. But it's like, you should never corner a metahuman, right? That's just stupid. Very, very stupid. And then she which I like the way her eyes, because it's like she's not fully Killer Frost, but still, seeing her eyes shift like that, but still looking 100% like Caitlyn, which, I don't know, it's kind of cool. Luckily, the mom stepped in and she kind of resolved it. It's just kind of oh, she was actually there for her daughter in a time that she needed her. And it's like, okay, call the, I'll deal with this. You just get out of here. Which, once again, my pessimistic mom was like, this whole thing was a setup, wasn't it? You're actually working against her. But by the time the end of the episode came, it's like, no, her mom was really looking out for her. it seems like, the more Caitlyn uses her powers, the less likely it is that they're going to be able to kind of reverse it. I mean, but as you can see, it's not just like using it. It seems like just anytime, like her powers are kind of slipping out naturally, but it also seems like it's tied to emotions too. If she gets angry enough, her powers are just going to come out. I'm surprised she's been able to kind of keep it under wraps this entire time. Like I said, I'm bringing it back again. I don't know. Like, the only reason I can justify why she might be hesitant to just be open about it is because it's just, mainly because of the whole Killer Frost thing. She sees what her Earth 2 counterpart was like when she had powers. So I think she's afraid that's going to happen to her as well. So, I mean, like I said, I also brought up, Cisco's way. It's just kind of like, I don't know if I'm going to be a good person if I get powers and whatnot. So, just very interesting kind of getting to see that different side of Caitlyn, because her mom's been brought up to my memory. The last, at least the only time I ever really remember her mom being brought up in conversation was back in season 2 on Earth 2. Like, Caitlyn and Killer Frost had that whole conversations about their mom. So it's kind of like, it kind of made it seem like from their conversations, like, yeah, mom's not the most pleasant person to be around. And it seems like this episode kind of backs that statement up and kind of in spades. It's going to be very interesting to see, like, will we see her in the future and see, like, Caitlyn being a little more, see where their relationship progresses, or, I'm not expecting it to kind of be like a Felicity's mom situation where she pops up the entire season, or at least like a large part of the season. But I'm just curious, is it going to be something we see kind of develop more and more a little bit here and there or not? Especially because she's going to be trying to help Caitlyn deal with this whole situation, bro. Because, I mean, that's the thing, though. Like, she knows the entire team would have her back. It's like, doesn't matter about Earth to you. It's like, you're still Caitlyn. They do their best to help you. But I guess the other side of it is, it's because, just having powers in general terrifies her. Just having powers like this that she can't even control. And I guess more so than anything, she doesn't want to control them. And I guess she feels that if she told someone like Barry, or she told Cisco, they'd be supportive. They wouldn't be like, no, don't try and get rid of your powers. Accept it. You can help us fight bad guys and stuff like that. And maybe that's another reason why she doesn't tell them, because she knows they support her and want her to keep her powers, because they'll be like, your powers aren't a bad thing, they're a part of you now. So, and also an interesting thing is, we find out, like, this isn't something she's been keeping for, like, a long period, like, over the course of these 3 years. It's not like she was just keeping this secret. It does seem that it's only something that's manifested after like 2 weeks, because it came up like the whole particle accelerator originally, like, people's powers can manifest at different times, that some of that stuff could basically be residual in a person, and it could be laying dormant the entire time. It seems like for Caitlyn, it's spent most of this time dormant, but it wasn't until recently that it kind of popped back up. I mean, that it popped up at all that she was a metahuman. So. And another thing in this episode, a big part of it, was dealing with Julian. I don't know why I said it weird like that. Finally kind of getting an opportunity to kind of understand him a little better. I like the fact is that Barry was just kind of like, all right, he's like, you know what? I'm going to try, it's just, I can't stand this dude. I hate him. He's like, well, you've been saying that for the past year. He's like, yeah, but, prior to me coming here, he didn't exist. He's like, well, that's kind of because of the whole Flashpoint thing. He's like, yes, I know it's because of Flashpoint. He's having, like, the most irritating person in his life exists because he changed time. It's like, you can't really be mad at anyone. It's just, no matter how aggravating Julian is, he's only there because of Flashpoint. So you kind of have to blame yourself for your own annoyance, But we kind of got to learn a little bit more about him when Barry was like, you know what, Julian, let's squash the beef a little bit. You know what? You're such a smart, intellectual dude. I want you to teach me. I mean, granted, that was all after he got snitched on Barry. It's like, oh, Barry doing all these things. He's kind of late all the time, stealing some of my files and stuff like that. And Singh is kind of like, okay, Barry, you've been doing good work. Watch what you're doing. And then Julian's like, really? That's it? He's like, oh, I guess the golden boy won't, get in trouble. And it's just kind of like, ugh. Because you just saw Singh's look in his face. Just like, yeah, you reported, yeah, he's like, oh, these 8 things. It's like, no, you reported there's 9 things. It's like, 9 things. And he's just going to get like a slap on the wrist. And it's just like, it was just kind of incredible. But the fact is, Barry's like, you know what? Julian, you're such a smart dude. Help me. I'm such an idiot. I could learn something from you. And then Julian, Barry feeding into Julian's ego. He's like, all right, follow me around. And they kind of spend time together. And you kind of learn a little bit more about the fact is that he actually doesn't like metahumans. Not just the bad ones, metahumans in general. He's like, because he brings up good points. He's like, the Flash actually does a little more harm than good because the Flash, it's like the Flash makes the police department very lazy with their job because it's like, what's the point of doing anything when the Flash is going to show up? But Barry's like, oh no, I feel like he's an inspiration to people and stuff. Like, I always love when superheroes do that. It's like you have to talk about your alter ego in a more positive light. I really like it because there are occasions where superheroes kind of downplay their other counterparts and then be like, oh man, I know, right? Such an idiot. It's just like, what was it? The Telltale games or something. One of the things Bruce says one time is like, the bad guy. Granted, I don't agree with the whole cape situation. It's just, I love that when you just, you're talking about yourself. But in this case, Barry's just like, oh no, the Flash is awesome, man. Yeah, he does a good job. He helps people. Inspirational. But you end up finding out really the big problem that Julian has with metahumans is because they squander their powers. Because they had the power to do such incredible things. They could do such good with them. Which, you have metahumans like Barry doing good stuff with it. But at the same time, it's like, no, that doesn't change the fact is that they're bad metahumans too. And so I guess in his mind, they kind of all get wrapped together. Because it's like, I could use those powers for good. It's like, in a sense, he's jealous because it's like, oh, like I wasn't chosen. I wasn't special enough to become a metahuman and have these powers that, I could do so much for the city. I could protect a lot of people. I could save lives. But sadly, it wasn't, I guess I wasn't chosen for it. And so now, and it kind of gets evolved even more because you learn, basically, he's from a very wealthy family. He's supposed to, they come from owed money. He's supposed to kind of take the reins. But Julian's kind of the oddball. He was more interested in, science than he was kind of taking over the family business. So it kind of made him an oddball amongst the family. But he also ended up finding out apparently he was in the military for a couple years holding a gun. Because even Barry's like, yo, why is a CSI holding a gun? He's like, I was in the military for a while. I was like, wow, that's kind of badass. But you also learn, like, to him, he strives so hard, especially because, I can only assume, like, because he wanted to make his own path. He loved science and he wanted to follow that path. So he made it to the top of the class. He tried to be the best, kind of learn everything he could. And then the world changed on him. Metahumans exist. And it's like, now I don't know anything about how they work, how they operate. It's just all new territory for me, which it would have been stupid, I know, but there was a part of me halfway expected Barry to be like, yo, I'm the Flash, you can study me to learn about metahumans and stuff like that. I don't know. There's a part of my brain that went there just for whatever reason. But still, it's just, he's a normal human. Like, the fact is he's envious. The fact is you have powers and you squander them. But also because it's like, it's more, his biggest problem with metas is the fact is, it's because, like he admitted it before to Barry. He's like, I don't like what I don't understand. And that was his biggest thing. He doesn't understand metahumans. He recognizes the fact is there's good and bad, especially after the whole thing with Barry stopping him from stopping the bad guy this episode, which turned out to just be some 15-year-old kid. I was actually I was like, oh, it's a monster. Oh, it's a hologram. Well, granted, that shows you how smart that kid is to be able to make a holographic monster like that. Also showed you just how much of a bad guy you are. The fact is you're able to do something like that. But you kind of sympathize with his reasons because he's like a 15-year-old kid. He got bullied at school and he was always, left in fear and like with feelings of fear. And so he kind of wanted to make everyone else kind of feel the same way. It's just kind of, you can't wasn't able to directly affect the people that were bullying him, so he kind of lashed out to everyone else. He just wanted everyone else to kind of feel the same way he felt. So, but Julian almost killed him if it wasn't for Barry stepping in, because it's like almost killed a 15-year-old kid. Granted, it's like a situation where it's like, yo, Julian told you to stop, but it's just kind of like, Julian was like, Julian was in a state of just kind of like, I want to stop this monster that's outside. Because I don't know if at that point he found out, because everyone thought the monster was real, so it's like, oh, I think he's controlling it. So I don't think they really realized that because even the cops didn't realize it was a hologram, so I doubt, like, inside the building, Julian actually recognized it as a hologram either, so he thought it was real, so it's like, I have to stop you, so. Which, like, I really probably best action scene of the episode was when Barry, like, literally reached out. I feel I have to stop doing that, because I feel like I'm literally stealing from Superhero Smackdown when I'm doing it. Like breaking it down. Like I need to stop doing that. But still, point is like he sees that sniper bullet go through the monster and is heading for that lady, and he stops it in front of her face. I was like, dude, that was so cool. And I don't even know if the lady realized it, because even when Barry caught the bullet, she was still standing there like nothing happened. So it's like, I guess he moved so fast she didn't even realize a bullet was coming for her. I mean, it moves at an extremely fast speed, so really in a situation like that, you don't recognize the bullets coming toward you until it's already too late, after a person has gotten shot. But Barry stopped it, like, and not just anywhere, that bullet was heading for her face too. So that was, whew. But it does seem like Barry and Julian are going to be kind of closer friends, you know. It's going to be interesting to see where that goes for the future. So it kind of just like takes away my theory. I was like, originally I brought it, I was like, oh, Julian's probably alchemy, but it's like, there's no way. The way he kind of presented the fact that he disliked metahumans so much, I'm like, okay, the moment he brought that up earlier, I was like, there's no way you're alchemy out there making all these metahumans. I mean, maybe that could be why alchemy also does what he does. It's because he's like, in some shape or form, he's envious, because alchemy isn't actually a metahuman. I think alchemy just found something that kind of gave him the power to do what he's doing. Or maybe alchemy is a metahuman, but I'm pretty sure it's just probably like a regular dude that got access to some great power or something. Some kind of special device that allows him to do what he's doing. Bringing people over into this world from from Flashpoint. I am very curious though, like, what happens to those people from Flashpoint? Because it's like that. Because the thing is, like, I'm very curious, like, that timeline is completely gone. So it's like that time, like, what does he do exactly to recreate a timeline that no longer exists because Barry went back to make sure it no longer exists? Or are we kind of saying that, like, no matter what, even though Barry went back in time and because he created a third timeline, does that mean technically Flashpoint still exists, or did it disappear? I mean, if you want to get all technical about it, I mean, it'd be kind of interesting because in some shape or form that there is residuals of what is Flashpoint, and that's why he can bring them over. I'm just very curious about how he is able to do that. I haven't really brought it up before, but that's kind of interesting. Like, this is like taking the minds and memories of the people that existed in Flashpoint and then bringing them over here. So really, I was thinking, like, because in my mind, I'm thinking like he took the actual person from Flashpoint and brought them over here. But it's like he took their mind and the memories. Well, more so than anything, that's what it comes down to, the essence and the memories of Flashpoint, and puts it in the respective bodies. But then it's kind of like, how does he make someone a metahuman? So it's like, I guess, I mean, obviously he's able to bring them, you know, he kind of puts them in a bit of a cocoon process. So it's just, I'm very curious to find out how that whole thing works. I mean, maybe we'll get a little bit of that in the future, but another story element in this episode is Wells himself, because it's like, hey, we're working with the new Wells. You know, you got Cisco being suspicious, like, something just ain't right about this dude. What is it? And ends up finding out, it's like, oh, he's a scientist and a novelist. That's kind of his big secret, because he's literally kind of throwing out ideas like, oh, that's good, it's good. Oh, let's do some team building work, guys. And everyone's just like, oh yeah, sure. And then, like, you know, Barry starts figuring out, he's like, yo, he didn't actually bring anything new to the conversation. He literally just recycled what we're saying. And Cisco's like, I know, right? He's been doing that literally all day. Something's fishy. And it's like, apparently, like, the whole, because I was halfway spinning. It's like, oh man, he's got some deep dark sea. Oh, you're a novelist. That's why you came to Earth. This Earth, because it's like, oh, you want to write a book, you know, Adventures of HR. It's just kind of like, okay. And then you come to find out, and, you know, Cisco knows, he's like, you're an idiot, aren't you? Not necessarily an idiot, but it's like, you're not actually, you lied. And he admits it. Yeah, I'm not actually a scientist. I'm the idea guy. I kind of give a general idea. I come up with ideas. And he had a partner who helps him out, kind of fill in the blanks and kind of get, you know, deals with the technical aspects of things. But he's the idea guy. And it's just kind of like, so you lied about you being the one that solved it. It's like, nope, my partner solved it. He brought it to me. He solved it. And I took this as opportunity, because on his Earth, he basically acted as the face of Star Labs. Obviously, he had his partner doing the more technical stuff, but he was there kind of like, hey, I'm the idea guy. I'm the face of everything. Until he got outed and kind of brought shame upon himself, essentially. So he came to this Earth for a new beginning. I think he is telling the truth about wanting to write a book, but also because it's like, hey, a new chance. And it's like, hey, guys, let me stick around. I'm going to be sure to help you guys out, come on, I'm the idea guy. And it's going to be very interesting because he isn't like the super intelligent guy. It's like the past two whales, no matter what the situation was, even Eobard pretending to be him. I mean, it makes you wonder, is it just because Eobard's smart, or was it just because it's like, I have future knowledge on my side, so that's how I could help figure this stuff out? I mean, it's like, I mean, obviously he could help Barry because it's like, well, I understand that speedster better than anyone else. But also, you know, Earth 2 whales are just a smart dude. Whales in general are typically smart. And I just love it. We just happy to pick the one whales that's kind of an idiot. Not necessarily an idiot, just kind of like a regular dude. He's not particularly like smart like all the other whales, but still. But it's going to be interesting to see how that progresses, like what he does bring to the team. It's just kind of what's probably going to happen is him and Cisco are eventually going to get like kind of a rhythm going. It's just like, you know, he kind of creates the idea and Cisco kind of takes that concept. He's like, okay, it started off as something possibly stupid, but now but actually, when you actually think about it, it's like, it's actually pretty cool. So actually we're going to like go through it. I mean, so that'd be kind of interesting to see. Just overall, just a very interesting turn of events. It's like you're halfway expecting him to be evil. I mean, who's to know? Maybe there's some other secrets that he's hiding. But I mean, for right now, the only person keeping secrets is Caitlin. So that's going to be very interesting. Overall, very interesting episode. Like I said, sadly, the monster ended up not being real. Because I was like, ooh, I saw the previews. I was like, dude, a monster? That's going to be cool. How's Bear? Oh, it's a hologram. But once again, like I said, smart kid. I'm very curious to see if that kind of plays into thing. Because I'm surprised no one's asking questions like, yo, kid, how the hell did you do that? You programmed like a super like that takes some smarts. So I'm very curious to see if that pops up again. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. We'll just have to wait and see. And now moving on to this week's episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Very interesting episode. We kind of get a little bit more of a look at Robbie's past. Now, I know it was a drive-by shooting. My impression of it was when Robbie brought it up, I was like, oh, like they were somewhere, the gang rolled up and shot at him. But apparently, no. What it was Robbie was going off to kind of do his racing thing because that's what he was doing. And he kind of dragged Gabe along with him. And, because he was basically going to do the racing. But obviously, I mean, he was being somewhat responsible. He's like, yo, you're not going to be in the car with me on racing. You're going to be over there. You're going to be on the sidelines. And you're going to watch me race and watch me win. So... But, I mean, because I love, because initially, Gabe's like, yo, my brother's a secret agent. Why didn't you tell me? And even, Daisy's kind of backing up the lie, but then, he's finally telling, Gabe the truth about everything that happened. And so that leads to, I mean, obviously I kind of already started it, but, the story of just like the gang pulled up and lit them up, like, Robbie got shot. You could see Gabe in the passenger seat get shot. I was like, man, that's messed up. But I love when they kind of slow it down because you got Gabe's perspective originally, and then Robbie's like, that's what you think happened? Well, what really happened was this. And you see when the car's flipping, Robbie gets thrown into the air, you see kind of slow motion. I was like, dude, that's a pretty amazing shot, just how that looked. And it's like while he was in the middle of the air, he was praying to anyone, God, anyone that would listen to save his brother's life. And then he landed on a pavement and died. He didn't get hurt in the accident. He straight up died. And then he ended up getting someone answered his call. It's like, oh, dude, do you want vengeance against the person that did this to you and your brother? Do you want the power to kind of make them pay? And he said yes with all his might. And then he got presented by the writer. That's who came to him. Now, because, multiple things. I don't know how to interpret it. Either that was a human who had the writer within them before Robbie, or was that just the writer's essence itself kind of going inside of him? Because this is 100% based off the movies. The movie, because the first movie, because like I said, I don't know that much about Ghost Rider, but there are multiple writers at any given time, right? There's never just one, right? I mean, maybe there is, but that's why I'm wondering, is it necessary? Because to me, I think the only way to really pass on the writer's essence is if you die. So I'm curious to know, in this whole Marvel Cinematic Universe, I mean, it's something we'll probably learn later on, but is Robbie the first Ghost Rider? Because my understanding, the writer is very ancient. I mean, considering what it is, it's basically a hell demon, so it's kind of most likely it's been around for a very long time, but it's very ancient. So I'm curious to know, for one, really how old it is, but also, had there been writers before Robbie, and that is, like I said, is that what that was? Was that one writer passing it on to another? Like, could that previous writer have been dying and they needed to pass on the torch to someone else? Or was that just, a physical manifestation of the ghostwriter's spirit and then it inhabited his body? It could go either way. Which led to an interesting conversation with Gabriel, because Gabe's like, you killed all those people. And he's like, I did it for you, bro. They put you in this wheelchair. I had to make them pay. And he's like, I didn't ask for this. Like, yeah, did you ever hear me complain about being in a wheelchair? I never asked you to get vengeance for me. Don't put that on me. And that's the thing, though. It kind of, you don't really see Robbie kind of deal with it. But the fact is, Robbie did it more for himself than he did his brother. Yes, he did it out of concern for his brother, because it's like, you did this to my brother. But it's because he blames himself more so than anything. He did it out of guilt, because Robbie knows that if he had not dragged Gabe along, none of that would have ever happened. His brother wouldn't have been in that situation if he had not dragged him along. None of this would have been happening if it wasn't for him. So he, straightly blames himself. Which the blame doesn't solely fall on Robbie's, shoulders. Like, it was circumstances. I mean, because you end up finding out this episode, the whole reason why this whole thing went down is because Joe, the same Joe, Lucy's husband Joe, actually put a hit out on Eli because of the whole experiment thing, which I'll get to that obviously in a little bit. But he put a hit out on, I guess he just said, he told him what car Eli drives. And so when they hit Gabriel, when they shot at Gabriel and Robbie, they didn't bother checking to see, like, oh, if that's the person they were really supposed to be going after, because it is originally Eli's car. So they saw the car, they just assumed, Eli was driving it, but, Robbie and Gabe kind of got caught in the crosshairs. Now, the point I was going to get to is kind of interesting, is the fact is that Eli, okay, in this episode, we find out Eli is not the straight shooter we thought he was. I kind of brought it up last episode. What if you end up finding out Eli's kind of actually more tied up into this, because at the end of the episode you see him reading the book, he's got that smile across his face. Well, this episode kind of fills in that blank, because it's like, hey, the reason why this all happened is because Eli's the one he had a bigger part to play in this. He made it seem like, oh, I was just a janitor. It's like, no, he was a part of this experiment. A big part of it. He was one of the crucial members of the experiment team, and also he's the one that sabotaged it. He's the reason why everyone else turned into ghosts, is because he put them in that situation, because essentially the experiment was going to obviously the experiment was to make matter out of nothing, essentially, not turning something else into something else, but it's like generating power and creating, at first they ended up making carbon out of nothing. But then it was like, Joe has kind of got it in his head. It's like, oh, he's become obsessed with power. The both kind of drive him a little crazy. And it's like, oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to essentially become a god, and I'm going to tap into that power rather than using a machine to be able to create whatever I want. I'm going to be the machine that basically I'm going to control that power directly. And so it seemed like Eli was trying to stop him at first, like, oh, trying to be the good guy. I was like, oh, you sabotaged the machine trying to stop him. It's like, no. Eli sabotaged the machine, sabotaged everything, because he wanted the power for himself. That's why he beat the hell out of Joe, not just because of everything that he did. It was actually because it's like he wanted the power for himself. And it's like, dude, I actually like that twist. I was a little suspicious of Eli before, but it was like, I never would have thought like full-blown villain status was just like, yo. I mean, granted, you put that much potential power before someone, it's like, people are bound to go a little crazy. I mean, we saw what Joe did, just kind of like, it's not too much of a stretch to believe that someone else would, want it. I mean, mainly that's why Lucy, I'm pretty sure she wanted to continue the experiments, like she said that last episode. And funny because Eli's, if we do this wrong, thousands of people could end up being dead. She's like, I don't care, just because that book kind of put a hold on them. And it's just kind of like, at first she was like, no, this is the right thing to do. Oh, we can do so much good for it. It's like they started off with the best of intentions. Like always, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So it's that type of situation. Like they started off with the best intention, being like, oh, we can eventually, fix the starvation problem out there in the world. You can actually make food for people, and we can help to change the world in a positive way, to making it like, I could change the world by gaining all this power. And, in Lucy's case, she's like, oh, my husband, I follow Joe because it's like, oh, all the good we can do with this. But granted, it's just, I don't know. It's just, I mean, we see him kind of tapping into the power a little bit at the end of the episode, but that was it. Plus, we also had Coulson, Fitz, as well as Robbie disappearing. Where they went, what happened, we saw him get hit with a shockwave. That's about it. So I don't know. It does make me wonder, will he kind of go back to get the Darkhold, even though he's got this power? I mean, who's to say whether he'll be able to 100% control it or 100% tap into what he's capable of? So I'm sure he's going to come back after the Darkhold. Some other interesting things that kind of popped up in this episode. Well, I'm going to go ahead and say it now, like, to anyone that doesn't know, because I stuck around after the credits, because there was no look at, like, oh, what happens next episode. Got a little peek, but not too much, because the show's not coming back until November 29th. To anyone that doesn't know, that's 4 weeks from now. Right? I know. Like, to me, that's a little weird, because it's like, why are you taking that break so soon? Because normally the show will have, like, a winter break, kind of splitting the season up. So I'm like, December's, like, right around the corner. So it's kind of like, why not wait till then? But I was like, maybe when they come back, they're going to have a couple episodes and then take another winter break. It's just kind of interesting to me that they would take such a long break. But I'm sure maybe there's other things. Well, it kind of makes sense, I guess in preparation for Thanksgiving too, but still, like, you would expect maybe another 1 or 2 weeks episodes and then stopping or something, but no. So I'm curious about why they would do that. But because another thing that popped up in this episode I'll really quickly go over is the fact is that, I love the fact is that Robbie broke out of, like, that containment cage of theirs, and Fitz was just like, that's impossible, because initially he's like, Jeffries is there and he's like, is he an inhuman? It's like, well, he says he made a deal with the devil, and then Fitz is like, yeah, which we know is completely crazy, which Coulson was like, yeah, there's a rational part of my brain that's like, yeah, there's no way, but there's also the part of me that's looking at the fact that he's got a flaming skull that's kind of like, hey, maybe he might not be wrong about that. Now, the point I bring this up is, by the time this show comes back, it will be after Doctor Strange comes out, which comes out this Friday. So, not like this show really brings up those, like, the movies don't have huge effects on the TV show, on this particular TV show. It does to a certain extent, because you have something like Civil War, for example, which did, because it's like, oh, the Accord affected Inhumans as well, because they had to register as well. But, you take something like Age of Ultron. It didn't have a big effect on. I mean, obviously, everything's connected. So the events of one thing led to another. So obviously, Ultron led to what happened in Civil War. So everything is connected in that regard. But it's like in the show, like, Ultron's been mentioned like twice, because Raina had a vision back in season 2 about Ultron, and then, like, they brought it up this season because it's like, oh, like, Fitz is like, I hope Ida doesn't turn into we don't need another Ultron situation. So that's kind of the only, and then there was an episode back in season 1 that dealt with, like, the aftermath of Thor 2, if I remember correctly. So, no, most definitely, because that's also when you got into the whole Berserker storyline and whatnot. But nevertheless, like, you see what I mean? So I'm very curious. I know it's not going to have a huge impact on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but I am very curious to see how much of an impact it will have, because this is like the first step that Marvel's taken towards a more fantasy and supernatural side of the Marvel universe, because prior to now it's always been sci-fi. Like I explained before, it's like they brought it up in an episode just like, oh yeah, like he made sold a soul to the devil. Pff, no way. It's like, yeah, we found out that gods are actually aliens and stuff like that. It's like a science fictional approach to everything. But when Doctor Strange entering the field, it's kind of like maybe there's a little bit more kind of like, hey, there's a little they might still explain it away, but like, yeah, there's scientific reasons why this is all happening. I'm just curious, like, to see, like, even in a small way, what does that mean? Proceeding with it, like, wow, magic exists. What else exists? Because we don't really get to find out what Simmons' kind of secret mission that Mace, the director, center on. Which part of my brain is like, maybe it's something connected to Doctor Strange. Most likely not, but I can dream and wish, because it's like everything's still like the show is affected by the movies, but the movies don't recognize the TV show even at this point. I know it's just a reality that's just going to have to be, you're going to have to stick with, because in all fairness, it's like, I think, what was it, like The No kind of brought it up, because they were talking about Chloe's whole situation, because she was at a con or something, and she talked to a fan about, a fan brought up the question of like, it's like, yeah, they still don't recognize the show is kind of messed up and whatnot, right? And I think it was Ashley who was doing a story on a note, and that kind of covered that. It was like, that's a lot of a TV show to kind of invest in, especially if you're not into the TV show. You might be into the movies, but not care about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So if they integrated that into the movies and stuff like that, that's a lot you'd have to cover. That's a lot of ground you have to cover. That's like 60 plus episodes, at this point, because 3 seasons already, so that you'd have to go through to kind of be caught up on everything. I mean, I guess you could always go the cheap route and recap everything, but it's like, I don't recommend doing that. I recommend starting the show from the beginning, I mean, that's how I look at it. I still would want that. I want Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. to be a part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like I said, it is technically, but it's like, it doesn't get recognized, which I wanted to, and it's, me spreading my whole agenda. I know, I apologize for that. I'm just very curious to see how, if any way, like, how will, Doctor Strange affect the, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because I mean it's just going to be interesting seeing where that progresses moving forward. Like I said, most likely that's not what Simmons is off doing, but still. And speaking of Simmons, you kind of got an interesting thing in this episode where you had Fitz kind of worried about Simmons because it's like he's kind of upset and then you had May being like, okay, so is this about the new director or is this something between you and Simmons? And he's kind of like both because it's like, yo, I don't trust the new director. I don't like him. I mean, obviously you had this whole situation of like, yo, he's hunting down Daisy like she's a bad guy. It's like, no, she's a good guy. She fought long and hard for Agents. I'm about to literally say the title of the show. She was literally fighting for S.H.I.E.L.D. for such a long time. She's a good agent. She's a good person. There's a reason why she's doing what she's doing. Like, I mean, has she killed anyone? No. Granted, she's toppled a couple buildings and stuff like that, causing some quakes and stuff like that. But still, come on. Like, I mean, it's not necessarily excusable. It does lead to an interesting thing because it's like, there are consequences because, Jeffries kind of brings that up to... I think I keep calling him Jeffries. Jeffrey brings it up, it's like, the fact is that Robbie's going to have to pay for what he did. I mean, he kind of messed... Jeffrey up. I mean, they kind of went at it for a little while, but he kept punching and punching him. It would have been interesting if he had used the pendant stare on her to be like, how many innocents have you killed? It'd be kind of interesting because we do know that there are some secrets that he is hiding from. I mean, the fact is that the writer didn't kick in immediately doesn't necessarily mean he spilled innocent blood. So I think that's kind of one reason. Because normally if that was the case, more so than anything, because Robbie's saying like, oh, it's not me, like who did all these killings. It's like, no, it's the writer. It's like, you have to take some responsibility for it too, because that thing, yes, it's inside of you, and it kind of has a mind of its own, but you're the only person that can control it. Like in this whole situation, busting out of the cage, it's like, that was you on your own. It's because you let your anger get the best of you, because you're like, no, I gotta save my uncle. I'm not about to let you take me back, to your HQ to kind of, I mean, it makes you wonder what would Jeffrey have done. I mean, you can't, like, how do you stop the writer? Like, you can't kill him, because he regenerates super fast, and it seems like nothing can necessarily hurt him. I mean, I guess your best, because, it's not like Jeffrey did anything. It's like, oh, landed some blows against him, threw him, but it's like, that didn't do anything. If Gabe wasn't there to stop him, it's like, yo, it would have killed you. I mean, it would have proceeded to keep beating you up. But like I said, that's more Robbie than it was the writer. So it's just kind of interesting that he says, like, oh, I don't have that much control. It wasn't me. It was like, it was you, because the reason why you were chosen is because you seek vengeance. And so it's going to be interesting to see what they decide to do with Robbie's character, to see what path he decides to follow. Like, he wants to get rid of the writer because, he's still trying to figure out, like, what do I do? How do I get rid of this thing? But it's going to be interesting to see if he decides to keep it, because he's like, you know what? I'm going to go down my own path. I won't go around killing people, even those who deserve it, which I don't know if, because my understanding is like, kill all those who have spill innocent blood. So, with the Punisher existing in the Marvel Universe, it's kind of like, it seems like Ghost Rider is more of a more supernatural version of the Punisher. But that's what I'm saying. I don't know if that's something where Ghost Rider eventually... Is Ghost Rider, the version, like, Ghost Rider in the show, like, has Ghost Rider always been that and stays that? Or does Ghost Rider get to the point where he's like, people, even those who've committed atrocities don't deserve to die. Like, I'm above that. They need to be... kind of the Captain America way of like, hey, got to go through the law. Which you kind of have Jeffries kind of being like that in this episode. It's just kind of like, I don't, it's hard. Like I said, it's still hard to say. Like, it seems like he's not the good guy that we necessarily know, especially because he's teaming up with that senator lady, because she wanted something and we still don't know what it is exactly that she wanted. And I'm just curious to know what that is. And what was it, because she gave Jeffrey that information, but it's like, obviously she didn't give him that information for free. It does make you wonder, like, what would he have done if they caught Robbie and Daisy? Like, what would that have been like? Could it have been some backdoor deal with the senator lady, and was like, oh yeah, you got to hand them over to us or not, or I don't know. Just overall a very good episode. I'm literally tripping about the fact is why I had to wait 4 weeks for another episode, but it's like, hey, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D, ABC, y'all do you, I guess. Like I said, I'm pretty sure probably, because I'm not sure when the movies kind of lined up for some things. Some stuff, it's like, well, I was like, well, because I think around the time, I don't think was there a break in between Civil War and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D? I don't think there was. I'm not sure if that was like that for Age of Ultron either, but I'm just curious to see, like, is that a big reason? Why is it? Because it's like, yo, because Doctor Strange changes everything, it's like, yo, we got to take a break. Plus, you got the holidays coming up, Thanksgiving and whatnot. So we're taking a break to come back with the fact that it's like, yo, everything's changed, which I feel like, once again, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't have like huge changes because of it. It does change certain things here and there, but it's like, I'm very curious to see, will Doctor Strange really affect the show going forward? So. But really, that's all I had to talk about. More so than anything, I say talk, but ramble, because I just go from one thing to another, and I go off on these huge tangents like I did just there, and I do apologize. That ended up making up most of the episode, but that was just literally in the back of my mind when I thought about it. But that's it. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.